So how did a simple reorganization of this little corner right here wind up with me nearly losing my thumb? So there in the intro, you saw the aftermath of building these shelves. A pretty negative outcome for doing something pretty stupid. And I thought I would take the time to share this with you folks. It's one of those things I'd hate to admit that you've done something so stupid. I've been running table saws and power tools all my adult life, even into my teenage years. My dad was a contractor. Never had an issue. And so this, to me, really hurts the ego. Never ever, well, I shouldn't say I've never had an issue. A grinder left a pretty good scar on my same hand. Again, doing something kind of stupid when I was quite a bit younger. And I shot a nail through my finger once. That one really wasn't my fault. The nail I shot, and my hand was a good 18 inches down the board, putting end of a wall together. And that nail broke through the board and followed that board clear down and hit my finger and shot right through it. But other than that, that's really the only problems I've ever had with power tools. And I didn't think I'd ever have a problem with the table saw. I always considered myself really a pretty safe person when it comes to using a table saw. I've always kind of frowned upon those who get hurt, thinking you guys didn't know what you were doing, or you did something wrong, which in most cases that's probably true. It was definitely true in this case. So what led up to this little incident? So let's step back to the day before this happened and kind of lead into this incident. So it was Saturday evening. We'd been out with the family, looking at Christmas lights. And in fact, I think the Christmas video that you just saw, if you've watched it, the little Christmas greeting, that was the lights that we walked through. That was that night. We've got this old pup. His name's Shadow. We think he's around 15 years old. He's a rescue dog. We've had him for 12-ish years. And he's been part of our family that whole time. Like I said, I think we think he's around 15 years old. And things, they always say bad things come in threes. And I'm certainly hoping this was number 3. The horse was number 1 for us. Our dog Shadow was number 2. And then this was number 3. And how Shadow plays into this was, he's 15 years old. He can see very short distances. Real recently, he's went pretty much completely deaf in a really short time frame. It seems like in the last 8 months to a year, he's lost almost all of his hearing. He could still hear if you yell at him, but one of his favorite things is to come out and greet everybody that pulls in the driveway. And for months, we've been afraid UPS or FedEx is going to get him when he comes running out, because he can't see that good. And he likes to run right out in front of the rig and bark and, do dog stuff. Well, Saturday evening after going out with the Christmas lights, we come home, almost made it to the parking spot, and out of nowhere, I never even saw him. He come running out, and unfortunately, I'm the one that got him. And I'm a sucker for dogs, I'll admit it. Dogs are my soft spot. So he come out, and unfortunately, I had to go ahead and put him down. One of those things, you're 30 minutes from town, and even if you went to town, there's no vets that are there. So you kind of got to take care of things yourself. So Saturday night was a pretty rough night, and I wound up not getting a whole lot of sleep, maybe 2 to 3 hours. So Sunday morning, we were supposed to go to church, And by the way, if I went to church, I probably wouldn't have done this. So, anyway, we get up. I'm tired, and I just really didn't feel like being around people. So I said to the wife, why don't we just stay home? I need to get some stuff done anyway. And so we did. We stayed home. I come out here in the shop. At first I was just going to clean, and then I decided I need to do something with this mess. Get all my woodworking tools in one area. And I'm still, those stupid blue bins that are back there, I hate those things. They're great for storing things, but where the location they're at is terrible, and they fill with sawdust all the time. I'm going to make some drawers and move them down here. I may just make partitions in the drawers and put everything in those. Those things have never worked out quite the way I wanted them to. Anyway, back to the shelf thing. So I had all this scrap plywood that, well, I'm going to go ahead and throw this together while I'm out here. And so I started doing that. I was tired, and I preached and preached to my older two kids, don't ever go out and use power tools. Don't go around chainsaws when you're tired. You do stupid things. I got proof on my knee of that. If you watch the Baisley Elkhorn video, the upper Baisley, that last trip I made in there, 7 years ago, whenever that was, when I said we cut the road open and got in there, I got super tired that day and wound up setting a chainsaw across the top of my, right above my kneecap, and left me a pretty good scar there. I mean, it wasn't real deep, but if you cut yourself with a chainsaw, it's going to leave a scar. Anyway, so, I've always told my kids, don't go out and do stupid stuff. So I guess there's 3 things before this table saw that I've done with power tools. Anyway, I'm digressing. I've preached and preached to the kids. Don't come out and run power tools. Don't go do stupid stuff when you're tired. It's just a terrible idea. And here I am out here doing it. And I usually am pretty good at checking myself, saying, should I be running a miter saw or a table saw when I'm tired? No. And usually I'll just go inside and go play on the radio, go take a nap or whatever. Well, the last thing I was going to do was finish this little chisel holder behind me. And it was almost noon. I decided, hey, I'm going to knock this out real quick. Then I'll go inside and take a nap. And what's funny about it was at least 3 times during this process of building this thing, I'm tired. I should really go lay down and take a nap. But I'm one of those people that when you're tired, it just seems like you're really cranking stuff out. Your mind feels like it's in overdrive. So you're really getting stuff done. So I didn't want to stall that progress by going and taking a nap. So here's what happened. So I kept this piece of wood. This is the piece of wood that wound up leading to this. As you can tell, the blade caught the edge of that. Still some blood, dried up blood there. So what had happened was I've made a cut very similar to this. And this piece of wood was just sitting there, rattling along beside the blade, just like this. And yeah, the saw is unplugged right now. Don't worry, I'm not going to cut something else off. But this was sitting here rattling, and I was getting ready to make another cut. Mind you, right over here is push sticks galore. What I did was I set the board up here to make the cut, the next cut. And for some reason, in my delirious state of tiredness, I decided I'm going to move this piece of wood right here, this just scrap piece of wood. And instead of, even if, I don't know why I wanted to move it, but instead of grabbing a push stick, if I wanted to move it and get it out of there, for some unknown reason, I go down and with my hand to move this piece of wood. And I think, it happened so quick that, you're kind of in shock. But the only thing I can think that I did was accidentally shoved this, instead of shoving out and away, I shoved it into the blade. Just enough that it grabbed, my hand was right here, and it sucked that piece of wood back into the blade, and my thumb got the blade. At first, when it happened, your natural reaction, pull your hand back away from what just happened. And I was pretty sure it hit my hand. It did the typical kickback ting sound, and I knew something bad had happened. I wasn't sure how bad. And in my mind, it took a long time for me to look down. In reality, it was probably only a second or two. I looked down. I could see my thumb was still there for the most part. Then I noticed the blood running off. I didn't shut the saw off. I just grabbed a hold, went marching for the house. At that point, there was no pain. The pain really hadn't started yet. About the time I opened the door with my elbow, I got the door latches that, they're not round, they're the little handle type. Just reached down with my elbow, bumped it, pulled it open, walked out. Right about then is when the pain hit. And I wouldn't say it was the worst pain in the world. I've had a lot of kidney stones. To me, that's about the worst pain I've ever had. But this was a good 7 or 8 on that scale, 10 being kidney stones. But, it hurt pretty good, throbbed pretty good. I went inside, told the wife, hey, I'm going to need some help. And I think she thought that I'd cut myself with a knife or something. I seem to do that quite often. And we went to the bathroom, and I said, well, I need to wash it out, but I think this is going to be an ER trip. And so she hollered to the kids, get your clothes on, because they were in pajamas as usual. So I took my hand off to rinse it off, and I could tell from the look on her face that it was definitely an ER trip. Washed it off real quick, stuck a towel on. I hadn't really looked at the underside yet because, I didn't know what I was going to find there. I could tell it had definitely come through enough that it cut into my fingernail from the bottom side. So, it's a 30-minute drive from our house to the ER. So I had a lot of time to think about it on the way in and sit there in pain. So at the ER, I think the worst part about that whole thing was getting shots in this thing. That actually hurt worse than the actual cut itself, because they stick that needle in there and they stick it right down to your bone trying to get that thing dead. And then unfortunately the raw part, they have to stick it in there 4 or 5 times, and that hurt pretty good. Not as bad as a kidney stone, but it still hurt pretty good. Stung, I think would be the right word, and it makes your whole arm throb. Anyway, not a pleasant experience. And the worst part was they had me wash it out myself, because they said, well, you don't look too panicked about it. You don't seem to mind the blood. So we're just going to have you scrub this thing out because you know if there's pain there or not. So they gave me this little brush thing and underneath warm water and for 5 minutes scrubbing it. So I got a fairly decent look at it. It did get down to the bone. They took x-rays. It did nick the bone. And I'm not going to show pictures of what it looks like on this side. Here's a picture of what it looks like from the top side. It's not super bad, but if you're squeamish, you may not want to look, because they did put sutures through the top of my thumbnail to go over and grab what was skin down here and try and pull it up to cover the bone. It's kind of gross, I know, but it's what happens when you do stupid things. So they had to burn some little holes into my thumbnail, run those sutures through there, reach down and grab skin and pull it up. So here's a picture of that. Just 5 seconds. Look away if you're squeamish. So there's what it looked like. It wasn't pleasant at all getting those burn in there. My thumb was numb. Unfortunately, he had another case he was working on the ER. We only usually have one ER doctor on staff at the little hospital. So he had another case he was working on. So by the time he got back to me, the deadening had wore off again. So he had to give me another round of shots and go through all that pain all over again. But when he put the sutures through, that was all deadened. Burning through there, that doesn't smell good. I didn't realize burning through thumbnails could smell so bad, but it does. Anyway, I'll give you a kind of demonstration on this thumb, what happened. It more or less took the meat off from, right down that real meaty, fleshy part of your thumb. Hopefully that's in focus. Up and cut through on the opposite side. So most of this meat in here is gone because I evidently pulled sideways across that blade. And it got into the opposite side, cut actually into the thumbnail a little bit. It didn't go quite as deep on this side, but it just skinned it. I took quite a bit of the meat off, obviously down to the bone. So that's going to be, as the nurse actually, he had the exact same accident pretty much. His wasn't as wide, he didn't take quite as much of the meat off, but he took it down to the bone, and he's got a little divot in his thumb now. And he said anytime he bumps it, because there's no meat over that bone, you know it right away. So that's something I got to look forward to. In this one, hopefully I get to keep the top end of that thumb. It kind of looks like it's healing. I go back in a few days to see if they need to take the sutures out. Like I said, there was not much to grab onto to pull anything up to cover the bone. So the sutures go clear down, grab skin, pull it up, and the thumbnail is what's actually holding all that up. So I know it's gross stuff, but it's something I think you need to hear. If you're working with table saws, if you don't want to do stupid stuff like this and have doctors rooting around in your thumb, or probably worse yet is your hand, don't do stupid stuff like this. Don't go use table saws when you're tired. Use push sticks like you're supposed to. And I know there's no guard on this saw right now. I've just been using some dado blades earlier, so all the riving knife, everything was off. Not that the riving knife might have helped, because if I shoved it over and it was far enough to hit that riving knife, it might have kept me from shoving it into the blade. I don't know. But it was just pure stupidity on my part. I've run table saws for 30 years, since I was 17 years old. Well, almost 30 years. About 16, 17, my dad was a contractor, been around table saws all my life. Used them at home, shop class. I've had one ever since I had my own house. Never, ever have I had an issue with table saws. I've always thought, man, those people that do stupid stuff and cut thumbs and fingers off, they're just doing something wrong. And like most accidents, this was preventable. If I would have just been paying attention, and if I thought I needed to move that stupid scrap piece of wood, used a push stick to do it. Anything but what I did. So anyway, I thought I would share that experience with you folks. It's hard to admit you've done something so stupid and something that was so preventable, especially when I've been doing this for so long and never had a problem. And I've always kind of thought people that bought saw stops, the saw stop table saw, if you haven't seen one of those, I used to think they were kind of a gimmick, but it's on my to-do list now, is to buy a saw stop. I hate to drop, I think they're around $3,000 or so, but to prevent something like this again, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. Never ever thought I would have an accident running a saw, and all it took was just quicker than a blink of an eye for this to happen. So yeah, I'm thinking seriously that I'm gonna invest in a saw stop table saw down the road. And for all those people that I've always kind of looked down on, oh, you dummy, you just did something wrong. Well, it can happen to anybody. It just takes a split second of not paying attention. And like what I was doing here, my mind was focused on 3 things later that I was planning on doing. I know exactly what I was thinking when this happened. I was thinking about a cut that I was going to make, like 4 cuts down the lines, an angled cut over on the miter saw. I was not paying attention at all to what I was doing here. Not a bit. I was just going off of, instinct and what I've always done. And for some reason, instead of reaching over though and grabbing the push stick like I normally always do, and why I was even concerned about that scrap piece of wood there is beyond me. Who cared about the scrap piece of wood? But for some reason, because I was thinking of other things, thinking about that stupid angled cut I was going to make, I did that. So, again, hard to admit you've done something so stupid, but I thought I would share that. If you guys that follow us on Facebook probably seen this little incident earlier on, and thought I would just kind of throw a video together, explain what happened, and yeah, totally preventable. Don't work when you're tired. Keep all the guards in place. And for me, I think a saw stop's probably going to be a good investment for me, because as I get older, I'm probably going to be more prone to do stupid things. I mean, I was prone to do really stupid things when I was young on purpose, but now I'm doing stupid things because I'm absent-minded and all the stuff that comes with age. So anyway, hope you guys kind of enjoyed the video. I know it's kind of a bummer video. Dogs dying, horses dying, trying to cut thumbs off. Oh, by the way, I got to show you this. How close I come to losing my whole thumb. I just pulled up the tape here. Don't worry, it's not gross. Trust me. Hopefully this shows up. Focus. So right there, those two little scrapes, what that is how I had my hand positioned on that board when it pulled back over that blade. I'm pretty sure that's the teeth of the saw. And I think I was in motion of yanking my hand up, and it nicked me right at the base of the thumb right there. And then I think I rolled up, it got the top of my thumb as I yanked up. But I was that close, teeth marks in the bottom of my thumb, from losing my whole thumb. I feel pretty blessed about that. That didn't happen, and hopefully I get to keep the top end of my thumb. It's going to look kind of gnarly when it heals up. It's going to be a pretty gnarly scar there. I'm probably not going to have a thumbprint anymore. Not anything like I had anyway. So, but I feel pretty blessed that that's all that happened from doing something so stupid, and I didn't lose the whole thumb. So I guess count your blessings where you can. Have a great day. We'll see you guys on the next video.